In this video, we're going to be factoring a trinomial with the leading term of 1, meaning the coefficient of the leading term is 1, and that leading term is our squared term. So the first step to factoring is always looking for a greatest common factor. Okay, doesn't mean we always have one, but we're going to look for it. The second step is dictated by the number of terms. We're looking at a situation that has 3 terms. And our situation is essentially a trinomial is written in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. But we've already said the leading term has a coefficient of 1. So in this case, we can just think of that as x squared plus bx plus c. So let's write all the possible options for our signs. Okay, we could have x squared plus bx plus c, but we have 2 addition signs. And when we factor that, we're going to end up with 2 factors that both have addition. We could end up trying to factor a trinomial that's in the form ax squared minus bx plus c. If that's the case, we're going to end up factoring that into 2 binomials that both have minus signs. And then the third and fourth option are very similar. We have x squared plus bx minus c, or we have x squared minus bx minus c. Notice the last term in both of these is negative. In both of these cases, one of our factors is going to be positive and the other factor is going to be negative. They have opposite signs because our last term is negative. So let's try to factor one of these. And we're using, at least in this video, we're going to be using the guess and check method and the acronym FOIL. And what FOIL stands for, if you're not familiar with it, it means first, outer, inner, last. And you'll see in a second what I mean by that. So I'm going to factor x squared minus 7x plus 12. So we're going to factor that into 2 binomials. We're looking for factors of the first term first. So x squared is nice and easy. We know that the only 2 factors of x squared are x times x. Now, the second term in each one of these binomials is factors of the last term. So we're looking for factors of 12. And factors of 12, well, we could have 1 times 12, we could have 2 times 6, we could have 3 times 4, or we could swap those around. We have 12 times 1, 6 times 2, 4 times 3. So let's see what it is that we need here. Well, let's make sure we use the right signs before we throw our factors in there. So let's just look back at our notes. So we have a minus sign and then a plus sign. So we're looking at the second option here. Both of our factors need to be negative. So this has to be negative and this has to be negative. Okay, that kind of makes our life a little bit easier. So we could try 1 and we could try 12. Now to see if it's right, we could distribute this whole thing out. Okay, we could say, all right, x times x is x squared, check. Then x times negative 12 is negative 12x. And then negative 1 times negative x is negative 1x. And then negative 1 times negative 12 is positive 12. Well, we don't really need to go through that whole process because we know that we're going to get x squared. We took factors of x squared. So there's no reason for us to not get x squared. We know we're going to get a positive 12. We're looking at factors of positive 12. So we know we're going to get the last term. So the only term that we need to get is our middle term. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit. We're trying to get this negative 12, this negative 7x. And if we look at our check, it's the x times negative 12, and it's the negative 1 times x that's going to give us our middle term. I tell people, when you're factoring, you need to check your outers and your inners. And that's coming back to our acronym FOIL. Your outers, that's the term all the way on the left, times the term all the way on the right. They're on the outside. And the inners are the two terms that are touching each other on the inside. So when you multiply those together and you add them together, you get your middle term. So notice we get negative 12x and negative x. We add those together, we get negative 13x. That doesn't help us. So let's just go over here to, we get negative 13x over on the right side. That doesn't work. Okay, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to try something else. Okay, let's try our next two factors, 2 and 6. So I put negative 2 and negative 6 there. And now I multiply these together. Checking our outers and our inners, we get negative 6x. We get negative 2x. Put them together and we get negative 8x. That doesn't work either. So we got to try our next combination. Our next combination is negative 3 and negative 4. Check our outers and inners. We get negative 4x. We get negative 3x. Put them together, we get negative 7x. And that's exactly what we're looking for. So we get this middle term now using those two factors. So our answer is x minus 3 times x minus 4. I'm going to write it down here where it's a little bit cleaner. Okay, let's look at one more of these. X squared minus x minus 12. Again, so we're going to start this off. Factors of our first term. Now notice we have two negative signs. So if we look back up at our notes here, two negative signs. We are now looking at the last option. And our two factors have opposite signs. Plus sign and a minus sign. So we're going to need a plus sign and a minus sign here. And again, we're looking at factors of negative 12. So let's write these here again. Factors of negative 12. So we could be looking at positive 1 times negative 12. We could be looking at negative 1 times positive 12. We could be looking at positive 2 times negative 6, negative 2 times positive 6, positive 3 times negative 4, and negative 3 times positive 4. So it looks like we have a lot of options here. Excuse me. And this is what kind of gets people down. Like, oh my God, this is a lot of work. As you get better at these, it goes a lot faster. So what I like to do is I like to look at this middle term and say, hey, that middle term is 1x. And our signs in our binomial are opposite signs. So when we multiply these out and check our outers and our inners, oops, that wasn't really long enough. Our outers and our inners, we end up adding these together. And because of our signs, we know that our outers, when we multiply them together, are going to be negative, and our inners are going to be positive. And when we add those two together, a negative number and a positive number, the end result is going to be something that gets closer together. So when we check our factors, we want factors that are going to be closer together if we're going to get a middle term that's only negative 1. Okay, if we were getting a middle term that was larger, say -11, then we would want our factors that further apart from each other. We'd be looking at the 1 times the -12 and the -1 times the +12. So because our middle term is small, we're going to be looking for factors that are close together. So let's try, I want to write that down, okay? Middle term that's small. We're going to look for factors that are close together. And vice versa. If a middle term is big, we look for factors that are further away. That doesn't mean those are going to work, but that's where we should start. So let's start with the first two factors that are close together, 3 and -4. So we check our outers. X times -4 is -4x. +3 times x is +3x. Put those together, and we get -x. Look at that. We get our answer right off the bat, checking our first pair of factors using my little tip right here. So our final answer here is x + 3 times x - 4.